Hello everybody, it's Julia here from the Highly Sensitive Tarot, and I'm back again with my Sunday morning instalment of Jopham 78, and I think I must be up to about week 7 now. I feel there's perhaps 4 more weeks to go, so I think that's right. I may be wrong, but yeah, I'm quite glad actually to be getting through, and I'm quite glad to be getting up to the majors, because I think that by next weekend I will have started on the majors, which means that I'm coming to the end of this challenge. And that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed this challenge, because I have actually a great deal. Some days it's been really helpful for me. Some days it's really, the card of the day has related to my day so much that it's really given me a lot to think about. And other days it's been a bit of a drag. I've been busy some days, or tired, or not well, and haven't always wanted to sit and sort of reflect and think about things. But I think it's been good for me overall, to be honest. So I'm still really pleased to be plodding along with this challenge. So when I finished the last week's video, I was up to the Knight of Cups. So Sunday of last week, the 24th of September, is the Queen of Cups. And as you'll remember, I'm using the Goliath and the Curious Travels decks. And my definition of the Queen of Cups, I have quite a difficult relationship, I think, with the Queen of Cups, because I feel in a lot of ways that card relates to me, and not always in the more positive sense either. But in its higher realms, this card is really about compassion and intuition and romantic ideology, being sensitive, nurturing, quite intense emotional capacity, being creative, protective, a natural born empath, a healer, sometimes a psychic. In its lower realms, this could be a person who's a little bit codependent, a little bit neurotic. Like I said, that intense emotional capacity and that depth of feeling can cause quite a lot of problems, I think, in people that resonate quite strongly with the Queen of Cups. It's a lot of emotion, isn't it? And, on your good days, it's, to be empathic and compassionate and intuitive and feel your emotions deeply on a good day. That can be of tremendous help to yourself and to other people, most certainly. But on your very worst days, it can take you to some very dark places, and it can cause problems within relationships if you're being kind of neurotic or codependent, as I said, overly sensitive. These are very difficult things for me. They're things that I've come unstuck with a lot in my life. And I think these days I appreciate my emotional depth and my sensitivity much more than I used to. But it's something that, like many character traits or personality traits, it has its good and its bad, doesn't it? So let's just do the detail actually first. So when I was looking at the detail of this card, I was looking at the amethyst crown that the bear is wearing. Again, I don't think I would necessarily pick a bear as a Queen of Cups, but I do like the amethyst crown. I think this bear is very calm and serene, and that amethyst crown would really enhance her intuition and her knowing, wouldn't it? So I do really like that. In the comparison and the discovery, this Queen of Cups here is almost like she's half fish, half sort of mermaidy type thing, isn't she? But it's like she's contemplating her life, and this is, again, a very serene card. There's a lot of grace about this card, I think, and we can see the waves behind her, two levels of them, which I don't know whether that shows the depth of this card. I'm not really sure. We've also got all of these crystals here that again will enhance her intuition and her knowing. And I've just sort of written about my day, that I pondered this card and really felt that it's difficult for me to get a healthy balance with this card and with what it represents, with my intuition and my compassion. And I think over the years, not so much anymore, but I think over the years, there's been a lot of uncertainty around those things for me because, as I said, I'm an INFJ and have scored that way consistently throughout my whole life. I first tested myself as part of my mental health nurse training back when I was about 21, and I still test pretty similarly, really. But I'm well aware that with an INFJ, that we're probably considered one of the more logical of the feelers and the intuitors. So I feel that, like, my logic takes me to one place and my intuition takes me to another a lot of the time. And there's a lot of uncertainty and insecurity around that for me sometimes, of not knowing what to trust, whether to trust my knowing, my gut, my intuition, or whether to trust my thoughts and my rational thought processes. And I think I try to do a bit of both these days, but I have learned very strongly to listen to my sensitivities and to take action really over those things, because I've learned that if I don't, those things will make me unwell. So yeah, it's a difficult card for me, the Queen of Cups. It's a beautiful card, but it's a card that I find quite difficult. So for Monday, we have the King of Cups. And my definition of the King of Cups is that he's really a master of his emotions, emotionally intelligent, much more in control than the Queen, gives such good advice, is calm and intelligent and caring, and has all those character traits like compassion and psychic abilities, much like the Queen, but I think slightly more rational and perhaps more reliable and stable emotionally than the Queen. For the detail of this card, I think again I very much would not have chosen an eagle here. This is called the Chief Eagle. I wouldn't have chosen an eagle for the King of Cups, although I can see perhaps why, because in this picture the eagle is up high in the sky looking down upon things, and I think that's part of that detachment of the King of Cups. It's not quite so involved in things as the Queen. But yeah, he's seeing everything from afar, so the King is much more able to be rational, I think, perhaps, about things. But again, I would not have chosen an eagle as the King of Cups. I think I probably would have seen the King of Cups as a mammal, something warm-blooded. But here in the Curious Travels, we've got another fish, haven't we, as the King of Cups, which I know is a watery energy, but again, I don't think I would have chosen a fish. I don't know, really. I've just put that this king here mirrors the Queen from yesterday. You know, the sea behind him is very turbulent. We've got 4 layers, 1, 2, 3, 5 layers of waves here. But the king is holding fast, isn't he? He's very calm and centered in the midst of all of this, and completely unfazed, really, I think, by all of this emotion around him. And in regards to my day, I just put that it was a much more calm and rational day for me, actually. The Sunday, I could feel some of that Queen of Cups energy. Not about anything in particular, but I just think generally I can sometimes feel quite unsettled in my emotional state. So Monday was a much calmer day where I felt much more secure and rational overall. And things that I'd been sort of ruminating on a little bit the day before, I was able to see on this Monday in a much clearer perspective, like the bigger picture of things, like this eagle is doing here. The eagle can see the bigger picture because he's up high, he's removed from his emotions, he's somewhat detached from his emotions. So I was keen to be in that energy, and I quite enjoyed my day Monday. I had a sort of quite a peaceful day, catching up on lots of little jobs really. So yeah. And then we've got Tuesday, we moved into the swords, and I think that Esther had called this piercing through with the swords, I think, is how she described the swords. And so the definition of the Ace of Swords for me is, I've written, it's about new ideas, finding clarity, it's about reason and intellect, right and wrong, having the courage in your convictions, going for it, seizing the day, striking now, seeing things clearly, getting insight. And the detail in this, I've put maybe the snake's tail whipping through the air there is like a sudden strike of inspiration or clarity. And that in its way may be feeding the ground underneath the snake, because the ground underneath it is all cracked and barren. So perhaps that sudden whip of that snake's tail is the clarity that's needed for whatever situation here. I'm reading from my journal, obviously, here, because I'd never remember all of this. Well, I obviously remember the definitions for the cards. I think they're imprinted in my memory forever, but just my more personal thoughts. So the comparison and discovery for this is that I've just written the red crown here suggests a sort of victory. We can see that might be this sort of aha moment, a sudden moment of clarity. And it said in the book that the blade of this sword is double-edged. So beware, because there could be the temptation to be too ambitious or too destructive in your pursuit of truth, which I thought was very interesting. I mean, swords can be like that, can't they? You can say something 1 minute that somebody will understand, and the next minute you've gone too far, haven't you? So yeah, so I totally get that. And as for my day, I've written that I couldn't say I'd had any major moments of clarity today in my thought processes, but I felt like I had been able to kind of seize the day somewhat and focused enough, because I often have trouble. My mind can be quite buzzy and flip from one thing to another, so I did manage to find quite a lot of focus on that Tuesday, and I again got caught up on quite a lot of little jobs that I'd been putting off. So that was a good day. And then we have Wednesday. These cards. So Wednesday. So we have the Two of Swords. And this is the blind seal, bless. And my definition is, this is about avoidance. It's also about solitude, self-denial, being stuck, being unable to make a choice, avoiding people or situations, only seeing what you want to see, delaying the inevitable, living in your head. And I could reel off lots more about this card, because this card for me has been a big problem in the past. I can still feel and remember being stuck in that place a few years ago, and it's an awful place to be honest. Being so stuck feeling afraid to step one way or another and to make a choice, and so you just sit there in this misery of being stuck, of not being able to move forwards. It's awful. So the detail in this card, I've written the candles. You know, what a strange thing to put in this seal's eyes here, these candles. But I think this is to do with lighting her own way, isn't it? Only seeing what she wants to see, like I said in the definition here. But, you know, the candles are obviously burning down, and at some point there's going to be this very, very rude awakening, isn't there, where this seal will not be able to ignore or avoid the situation any longer. She will have to look and see and process and make a decision and move in one direction or another. So yeah, I quite like that actually as a card, I have to say. For the Two of Swords, it's quite powerful, isn't it? So for the discovery, we've got a kind of similar thing going on here, really, because in the Curious Travels, this cow, I don't know why you would choose a seal or a cow for either of these cards, but this cow here is blind, so she's unable to see what's in front of her, and unable really to free herself. You know, she's only going to be able to move forwards or make a decision based on other things other than logic, really. Maybe her heart, her sensitivities, her other senses, her sense of knowing. But I think the sort of general message of this card is that even if you can't see, you still know. You still know what you need to do. And I think it's about, you know, us taking our own blindfolds off, isn't it? And trying to get that balance between our logic and our emotional contemplation and our need to retreat into that. So how this related to my day, well, that day I ended up having to cancel my parents who were coming over for lunch, as I was just really not feeling very well. I had a really awful migraine, terrible hot flushy sleep. I think I was awake more than I was asleep. And I've written, I'm not really sure how that relates today to this card, but in my head, when I was writing about this card, all I was thinking about really was, as I said, that situation 4 or 5 years ago where I was very much like this seal here. I was only seeing what I wanted to see, and I was not able to make a decision about what to do. It took me a long time, and it was a very, very painful process. So yeah, it's a difficult card, isn't it, the Two of Swords? I'm sure that we've all got terrible memories and experiences of that sort of feeling stuck with something that we've been avoiding for so long. And then we had, for the Thursday, the Three of Swords, which I had felt apprehensive about, sort of wondering, you know, what this energy was going to bring to me, or remind me of, even if there was nothing sort of, you know, really in my day about it. But this is called the Bleeding Raw Heart, and the definition I've written is sorrow, grief, heartache, emotional pain, anxiety, feeling lost, feeling betrayed, or hurting others, struggling to recover from something that might have been quite sudden. And I've written here in the definition that there's a real need to embrace that pain, processing and embracing the pain. For the detail of this card, I've sort of focused in on these spikes really around the bottom of the jar. And it's like the spikes are like kind of protective, aren't they? That it will stop anyone from getting too close to this wounded heart here. You know, even though it's in a jar, it's still further protected by these spikes, isn't it? No one's going to get too close to the jar or be able to open the jar with those spikes there. So it's kind of keeping, in a way, you know, because to be protective could be a positive thing. Sometimes we do need to be protective of our hearts, and we do need to isolate ourselves a little bit to process. But obviously, if this heart is sat there for too long in this state of separateness, then there's all kinds of suffering going to happen, isn't there? So it's a balance, I think, isn't it, really? And the discovery, the comparison, I've put that despite the heart being pierced here in this card, the sky is still blue, isn't it? And I think deep in that despair, we can miss these things, that, you know, the world still turns. And I've written, running away from pain just prolongs it. And I think that I've discovered in my life that pain can serve a higher purpose. You know, I've read a lot of Buddhist texts in my time. I really like Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun. And she writes a lot about suffering. And what a gift that it is in some ways, really, if you use that energy to grow and evolve, you know, because obviously eventually you want to have risen above some of these things. But pain is kind of inevitable in our lives, isn't it? It's not something we can always escape from. Sometimes things just happen. They happen to other people that we care about. Sometimes things just happen to us, and the ability to be able to sit in pain and not run away from it, not fill our lives up with huge amounts of distractions, it's a very brave thing to do. And I've written, I'm grateful that I'm not sat in this energy today, actually. And again, not sure how this card reflects on my day today. It had been quite a quiet, solitary day, pottering about and resting because I still didn't feel great. But I've written, I know this pain well, though, and I know that it is necessary part of life. You know, much can be learnt about yourself and others through suffering. So, yeah, like I said, I'm just very glad that I was not sat in that energy on Thursday. And then we have Friday, which is a much nicer card, isn't it? So this is the sacred space. This is the Four of Swords. And my definition is sanctuary, healing, being gentle with yourself and others, relaxing, resting, having some solitude for healing, creating safety for yourself, prioritizing yourself. It's a very soft and gentle card that sort of encourages you to stay quiet and regroup yourself. And I've written here that these upside down swords here, because they're not pointing towards the rabbit, they're pointing away, they sort of form a barrier of protection for this little innocent creature who's got his eyes wide open. So he could be sort of reassessing his thoughts and feelings, or he's maybe just looking up at the sky and just drifting. I don't know. And in my comparison and discovery here, because this has got a very different energy to this, hasn't it? Even though, like, what I noticed is the rabbit's got his eye wide open, but so has the woman here. But the rabbit looks serene and peaceful, but this woman doesn't. She looks kind of anxious. There is an anxious feeling about this card. And I wondered if this is sort of like the need to stop thinking about the past or the present. This is anxiety, isn't it? So she's either lost in the past or worrying about the future. And so I think this card is really encouraging you that when you take that time out to rest, that you actually really do that. And I think that these 3 swords here that are above her, they're hanging there as like that reminder of the past, of that past pain of the 3 of Swords, aren't they? That's what I feel, is it's a reminder of these. And she has the 4th sword underneath her, which is in gold, and I think that's to remind us to remember our inner strength, you know. I find that I'm in this position a lot of the time. My mind's constantly reflecting and assessing sort of the past and the future, and I find it quite difficult to be in the present and relax in the present. I have to remember this kind of inner strength all the time. So how this related to my day, I've written, this was another quiet day. I was cooking a big beef stew ready for the weekend. I had a rest in bed as I was still not feeling very well, and actually found it quite hard myself to not focus on the 3 swords above my head while I was having a rest. It was hard to switch off. And I actually chuckled to myself because I remembered this card as I was laying in bed, and, you know, told myself that I need to be more like the rabbit here. So be kind to myself and let myself drift. So, yeah. And then we have the 5 of Swords, which I've written out, but I've not actually written about my day yet. So I shall just say that, I think, as I'm looking. And again, these are 2 difficult cards, aren't they? But the swords often are, aren't they? So this is the white scorpion and the black scorpion, the 5 of Swords. This is defeat, disagreements, conflict, battles, particularly unfair battles, being in a hostile environment, feeling a failure, sort of power plays, ongoing disputes. Is a very active card of disputes, I suppose, isn't it, really? And the detail in this is I've just written the poor little white Scorpio here. He can't run away, because I'm pretty sure that I remember reading in the book that, well, you can see he's like on the edge of a cliff, I think, so he can't back away, he can't run away. He has to fight, and it's an unfair battle, isn't it? This little white scorpion knows that he's going to lose. So that's a pretty crappy position to be in, isn't it? And the comparison and discovery with this card is that this poor man here, who's all bandaged and bloody, he's sort of standing there, maybe resting a bit, and he may think that the battle is over. But I think, given that there are still people standing and the sky is all dark here, I would imagine that there is further conflict to be had here. This man is not quite as safe, perhaps, as he thinks that he is. And I've just written, I was just sort of thinking about the word conflict and just sort of thinking, is the conflict worth it? You know, when you think about this, the energy of this card, the 5 of Swords, if it's all about disagreements and conflict and potential defeat, you have to really think about, is the conflict worth it? You know, some things are worth fighting for, but not every battle needs fighting. I think sometimes with the energy of this card, it's more encouraging us to kind of seek some kind of forgiveness, and earn back trust with somebody, or that somebody needs to do that for us, somebody that has hurt us or has caused conflict with us. And as I said, I have not, I've written everything down there, but I've not written about my day for Saturday. I was with Pete yesterday. I'm just trying to think about the day, how this reflects. There were certainly no disagreements. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat again. There were certainly no disagreements. There was certainly no hostile environment. There was no power plays. I can't say that either one of us was one of these scorpions or this poor man here. I'm not really sure how this reflects on my day. I guess if I really think about it, there's a couple of ongoing things. Excuse me, I've got a terrible frog. Yeah, there's a couple of ongoing things, I suppose, really, that I am assessing in my head, I suppose. That question, is the conflict really worth it? Some things are worth fighting for and some things are not. So that underlying yesterday, I suppose that energy was there a little bit, but only very slightly, because those kind of issues are there in my head often, because like I said, I'm often overthinking things and being stuck in the past or the future and trying to make guesses about my present based on that, rather than actually just being in the present. So yeah, I suppose, although that wasn't an overt, obvious energy floating around yesterday, I can get this energy, because I think it's a constant thing, isn't it, in relationships, really, is always trying to work out what's worth talking about, what's worth risking a row or a disagreement over, and what things you can just let go, that you can just think, well, hey, just practice some more radical acceptance of the situation and just say, hey, well, I'm just going to let that go. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say. That's what I'm going to write in my journal about that day, I think. And I don't have the 6 there, do I? But yeah, so for today we have the 6 of Swords. So I shall be writing about that in a moment. So I guess that means, if that's another 6, yeah, by next weekend I should be at the end of the Swords and ready to start the Majors, shouldn't I? Which is exciting. Yeah. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed listening to my thoughts, to my ramblings. I always enjoy listening to how other people relate their cards to their self or to their day. I think it's very interesting. So and like I've said before, if you're still here with me on this journey, I'm very grateful. Thanks ever so much. Please do say hello. And I'm sending you all my love, and I will see you all again soon.